Hello everyone, welcome back to my channel. In recent months, Australia has been shaken by the disappearance of a 17-year-old girl on her way to visit her boyfriend. Her housemates claim she had arrived at the airport, yet her flight ticket was never used. No airport cameras ever captured footage of her. So where did she go? And how could she vanish within just 20 minutes between the road to the airport and the departure hall? What really happened that prevented her journey from ever taking place? In this video, we will uncover the mysterious disappearance of Phoebe Bishop and try to answer those haunting questions. And as always, before diving into the details, don't forget to leave a like, subscribe to the channel, and turn on the notification bell so you won't miss the next gripping case. Thank you all for your support. On the evening of May 15th, 2025, Phoebe's family panicked after receiving no news from her. She was supposed to arrive in Western Australia that afternoon where her boyfriend was waiting. Yet she never showed up at the airport, nor was she on her connecting flight in Brisbane. Her mother, Kelly Johnson, called her phone repeatedly with no answer. Fearing the worst, Kelly contacted Phoebe's boyfriend only to learn that he too hadn't seen her. Anxiety consumed her. She immediately phoned Phoebe's two housemates in Gingin but received only a vague reply. "We dropped her off at Bundaberg Airport this morning." Overwhelmed with dread, Kelly reported her daughter missing to police on the morning of May 16th. Later that day, Queensland Police issued an official missing persons alert for Phoebe Bishop. The disappearance of a 17-year-old girl at an airport spread quickly through the community. Her family was devastated. Kelly posted desperate pleas on social media begging for help. They also pointed out that Phoebe, usually carefree with money, had made no transactions on her bank account since May 14th. This was clear evidence that she hadn't simply run away. Those who knew her shuddered at the thought for Phoebe had never cut off contact for so long. The search for Phoebe Bishop had officially begun, sparking a mystery that stunned the nation. At the time of her disappearance, Phoebe was only 17. She was a tall Australian girl around 1.8 meters with striking dyed red hair and hazel eyes. Her mother, Kelly Johnson, ran a disability support service called Smiley Support Services. Phoebe herself had a mild developmental disability, but she never let it define her. Instead, she was described as bold, passionate, and resilient. She loved music, hugging her loved ones, and living life her own way. Her family situation was also unusual. She mainly lived with her mother and sister Kaylee since her parents had divorced. Kelly's employee, Tanika Bromley, a 33-year-old former carer, gradually became close to the family. At 16, Phoebe moved in with Tanika and Tanika's boyfriend, James Wood, 34, at their home in Gingin. For Phoebe, it was a chance to practice independent living. Her mother agreed, trusting Tanika, who had once been Phoebe's carer. Outwardly, Phoebe's relationship with her housemates seemed good. They even referred to each other as associates. At the time of the incident, Phoebe had booked a flight to visit her boyfriend Levi, 18, in Western Australia. They had met online and eagerly anticipated their first in-person meeting. Levi had even planned a romantic camping trip to Esperance Beach, along with a gift, a $1,000 Canon camera to support her passion for photography. The day before her departure, Phoebe shared her excitement with her mother, who felt both worried and happy for her daughter. No one could have imagined that this trip would never happen. Back to the investigation, the only clue police had was the last sighting of Phoebe near Bundaberg Airport on the morning of May 15th. Reviewing CCTV, they noticed something strange. At 8:30 a.m., the car carrying Phoebe drove along Airport Drive, but she was never seen entering the terminal. The footage showed that no one exited the Hyundai Ioniq 35 before it turned around and left. The airport seemed like a sealed gate, and Phoebe had simply vanished on her way to the plane. When investigators questioned James Wood and Tanika Bromley, the two housemates of Phoebe Bishop, they received nothing but conflicting testimonies. At first, Wood and Bromley repeated the story they had told Phoebe's mother, that all three of them drove from Gingin to Bundaberg Airport around 8:30 a.m. on May 15th, dropped Phoebe off at the entrance, and then headed back home. They insisted they had no idea what happened to Phoebe after that, but investigators quickly realized there were glaring inconsistencies. First, why had no witnesses at the airport seen a tall teenage girl dragging her luggage through the terminal? And second, Why would Wood and Bromley leave immediately without making sure Phoebe boarded her flight safely? When pressed, the two could only stammer vague excuses, claiming they had urgent personal matters back home. Sensing something was off, police widened their investigation and searched the wooden house in Jingin where Phoebe had been living. The place was isolated, surrounded by clutter with an unsettling, gloomy atmosphere. Their suspicions grew stronger when they found the shallow grave of a dog in the yard, and inside a shattered flat-screen TV suggested there had been some kind of violent altercation. On May 21st, 6 days after Phoebe vanished, the property was officially sealed off as a crime scene. Police also impounded Wood's gray Hyundai i35 for forensic testing. From that moment, the case shifted from a missing person search into a full-blown criminal investigation, with detectives strongly suspecting that Phoebe Bishop had been the victim of a violent crime. Forensic teams uncovered chilling evidence. With luminol testing, they detected what appeared to be blood traces wiped clean from the house floor and the car's trunk. In addition, they discovered an illegal weapons stash, a sawn-off shotgun, multiple magazines, and 2 replica air rifles. Wood and Bromley were immediately charged with unlawful possession of firearms, a legal maneuver that ensured they stayed under police control. While investigators lacked enough to directly charge them with harming Phoebe, the pressure was mounting. Meanwhile, data analysts from the Queensland Police Service (QPS) combed through cell tower records. They found Phoebe's phone had gone dark on the morning of May 15th. But the phones of Wood and Bromley told a troubling story. Their GPS records placed them deep inside Goodnight Scrub National Park, a remote, densely forested reserve roughly 28 miles south of Jingin. This discovery on May 23rd completely shifted the investigation. Detectives now believed Phoebe might have been harmed and hidden somewhere in the wilderness. The QPS launched a massive search effort across hundreds of square miles, deploying divers, helicopters, drones, and specially trained K9 units. The terrain proved brutal. Thick brush, isolated dirt tracks, and vast wilderness made the search agonizingly slow. But investigators pressed on, driven by the phone data that led them here. Over 5 grueling days, search teams collected suspicious items believed to be connected to the case. Authorities kept details confidential, but admitted that evidence might have been moved before they arrived, suggesting the suspects could have returned to tamper with the scene. This grim reality convinced investigators that they were dealing with calculating suspects who were not only capable of violence, but also closely monitoring the police investigation. On May 28th, although investigators had gathered some evidence, Phoebe's body had still not been found. Her family was deeply worried. The local communities in Jingin and Bundaberg printed more than 400 missing person posters with Phoebe's picture and placed them everywhere from Bundaberg and Bargara to nearby small towns such as Childers and Biggendon. The campaign "Leave the Light On for Phoebe" spread widely. People kept their porch lights on throughout the night as a way of praying that Phoebe would find her way home. The unity of the community not only gave the family hope, but also created strong pressure on the police to uncover the truth quickly. However, on June 4th, 2025, nearly 3 weeks into the intense investigation, the police announced they were suspending the ground search at Goodnight Scrub. They had combed through a vast area without finding the victim, and resources were limited. This announcement was like a bucket of cold water poured over the family's last fragile hope. They were devastated, believing they might never be able to bring their daughter home. But evenings often bring unexpected turns. That same day, the police quietly launched a new strategy, separating the 2 suspects to create psychological pressure. That afternoon, James Wood was suddenly arrested for further questioning. The interrogation lasted for hours, with investigators repeatedly pressing on inconsistencies in Wood's statements. Notably, throughout this time, Wood had been living in his Hyundai because his house in Gingin was sealed off. Overwhelmed, exhausted, and sleep-deprived, his mental state began to falter. Eventually, the police strategy paid off. Later that evening, after being released, Wood immediately went to meet Tanika Bromley. Neither of them knew that their meeting was secretly monitored by undercover officers. On the morning of June 6, 2025, based on the evidence and intelligence gathered, Queensland Police believed they had enough grounds to charge the 2 with Phoebe's murder. James Wood and Tanika Bromley were arrested simultaneously at 2 different locations around Bundaberg. Both were quickly taken to the station for legal proceedings. The arrests came exactly 3 weeks after Phoebe's disappearance. Even though charges were laid, the victims still had not been found at that point. The top priority was to force the suspects to reveal where they had hidden the victim, or to intensify searches in newly identified critical zones. Luckily, phone data and fragments of testimony pointed police back to an area near Goodnight Scrub Park. On the afternoon of June 7, 2025, just 1 day after the arrests, the search team discovered a body in the forest lying on a remote trail surrounded by thick brush about 5.6 miles from the initial search area. The body lay on the ground uncovered and was in an advanced state of decomposition after 3 weeks. Based on clothing and physical features, police believed it was Phoebe Bishop. The scene was immediately sealed off, DNA samples collected and evidence secured. Kelly Johnson was heartbroken when she received the news. Even so, the family felt some relief knowing they could finally bring their daughter to rest. Examination of the scene confirmed the police's initial theory. Phoebe's body had been moved twice. She was killed on the morning of May 15th, taken to location A in Goodnight Scrub Forest, and on May 17th, the killers returned and relocated her to location B 5.6 miles away, where police eventually found her. The striking detail is that location B had terrain almost identical to point A, as if the perpetrators deliberately created a diversion to mislead investigators. This cunning plan nearly succeeded since the first search teams initially swept through the wrong area. The bigger question arose: how could the killers have moved the victim through such dense forest? Several theories emerged. Perhaps they drove a car deep into the woods under the cover of night, or carried the body by boat along the Burnett River, and then dragged it ashore at Point B. However, preliminary autopsy findings and traces at the scene suggested that they most likely used the Hyundai itself to travel along forest tracks. The car was later confirmed to contain soil and leaves matching the local ecosystem, and even strands of the victim's hair were discovered in the trunk. Piecing all the evidence together revealed a chilling sequence. Phoebe was killed when the car approached the airport area, then taken into the forest for disposal, and later moved again when the killers feared exposure. The entire investigation lasted just over 3 weeks, yet unfolded like a tense race against time. From a mysterious disappearance, Queensland police gradually unraveled the knots, spotting inconsistencies in alibis, uncovering crime indicators inside the house, harnessing digital evidence and applying psychological pressure until the suspects slipped up. People don't just vanish into thin air, the lead investigator had said, and he was right. Phoebe Bishop had not disappeared. She had fallen victim to a calculated crime. But why James Wood and Tanika Bromley? What grudge could they have harbored against Phoebe to strike at such a young woman? According to reports, James Wood, 34, and Tanika Christian Bromley, 33, were lovers who shared the same house with Phoebe. Both were locals in Queensland. Tanika Bromley had once worked in disability support care and was personally trusted by Kelly Johnson, Phoebe's mother, who hired her to assist her daughter. However, Bromley remained employed at Johnson's facility only until 2024, when she was dismissed due to restructuring a detail. Police suspect may have sparked motive. After losing her job, Bromley became unemployed and relied on her boyfriend James Wood. Wood had no stable career and was described by neighbors as someone obsessed with guns and living a strange lifestyle. Police later discovered an illegal weapons cache in his house, further suggesting Wood might have been involved in unlawful activity, or at the very least harbored violent tendencies. Court files also revealed a prior assault conviction from his youth. Even so, the motive behind the crime has not yet been publicly disclosed. Speculation runs rampant, perhaps personal conflict within the household, resentment after Bromley blamed Phoebe's family for her job loss, or financial desperation targeting Phoebe's savings and belongings. Some suggest jealousy that Bromley, tormented by Phoebe's youth and beauty, saw her as a burden to eliminate. And with Wood's violent streak, he could have been the one to act out the killing. In the end, James Wood and Tanika Bromley were a couple who appeared ordinary, but concealed disturbing darkness. They lived reclusively, kept little contact with neighbors. The presence of weapons in their home and their bizarre acts, such as burying multiple dead dogs in their yard, hinted at psychological instability or latent cruelty. Bromley, once trained to care for the vulnerable, now stood accused of harming the very person she was meant to protect. This betrayal intensified public outrage and left a haunting impression of cruelty and treachery behind the case. The criminal journey of the two suspects was pieced together by the police to better understand their motives and individual roles. On the night of May 14, 2025, at a small house in Jinjin, Phoebe was eagerly preparing for a long trip. She carefully packed clothes and her new camera into a suitcase. Meanwhile, in the living room, Tanika Bromley and her boyfriend James Wood sat in heavy silence, the atmosphere tense like a tightened string. Bromley, who had lost her job and was in despair, seemed envious of Phoebe's bright future. Wood, on the other hand, was frustrated by minor domestic disputes with long-simmering resentments waiting to explode. That night, Phoebe struggled to sleep out of excitement, while Bromley and Wood may have stayed awake, harboring darker intentions. A neighbor later recalled hearing shouting and arguing from the house around 5 a.m. on May 15th, consistent with police reports of unusual noises. Around 7 a.m., Phoebe pulled her suitcase into the living room. A minor argument may have broken out, but she still joined Bromley and Wood in the gray Hyundai to head toward the airport. By 8:20 a.m. near Bundaberg Airport, Phoebe threatened to call the police if Wood and Bromley continued acting strangely. That threat may have triggered Wood's violent outburst. Instead of turning toward the airport, Bromley drove into a deserted road. In those fateful minutes, James Wood turned to the back seat, struck Phoebe's head with a blunt object, and strangled her. By 8:40 a.m., Phoebe was dead. Bromley panicked, but Wood barked at her to stay calm. Wood then dragged Phoebe's body to the car floor, covered her with a blanket, and ordered Bromley to drive southwest toward Goodnight Scrub National Park. Around 10 a.m., they reached the forest's edge, carried her body deep into the bush, and covered it with dry leaves. They also took her phone, wallet, and luggage. When questioned, they lied, claiming to have dropped Phoebe at the airport and thrown her phone into the Burnett River, thinking their crime would stay hidden. But the very next day, May 16th, police summoned them for statements. On May 21st, officers suddenly raided, seized the Hyundai, and declared it the crime scene. Further investigations revealed that between May 15th and 18th, Wood and Bromley returned to the forest, burned Phoebe's suitcase and clothes, then moved her body 9 kilometers away and scattered lime powder to mask the smell. In the following days, they lived in constant fear. Bromley wanted to flee but grew overconfident, believing that without a body, no charges could stick. That arrogance trapped them. After Wood was briefly detained and released on June 4th, police recorded a frantic conversation between him and Bromley. During the exchange, both slipped crucial details. The next morning, armed with solid evidence, police arrested them. On June 6, 2025, just hours after Phoebe's body was discovered, James Wood and Tanika Bromley appeared before the Bundaberg Magistrates Court on charges of murder and desecration of a corpse. This was only a preliminary hearing, so the defendants did not enter pleas and were represented by lawyers. The judge denied bail, ordering both to remain in custody until their next hearing on August 11, 2025. During this time, Bromley's defense lawyer hinted that they would argue she had been controlled and abused by Wood, forcing her into the crime. In contrast, James Wood's side remained completely silent before the media. Legal analysts predicted the two might turn against each other in court. However, prosecutors still held the advantage with strong physical evidence, DNA traces, phone records, CCTV footage, and even the murder weapon. Queensland police declared they understood the motive clearly and were confident in the case's strength. The maximum penalty for murder in Queensland is life imprisonment with a minimum of 20 years before parole eligibility. Additionally, the charge of desecrating a corpse could add more years. Thus, both would spend a very long time behind bars reflecting on their crimes. And you, what do you think was the reason that Tanika Bromley and her boyfriend James Wood decided to take the life of the young woman who once lived with them? And how many years in prison do you think this couple will have to serve as the price for their crime? Share your thoughts with me in the comments section below. And before we close this case and say goodbye, don't forget to leave a like and a subscribe for my channel so we can continue to explore many more mysterious cases together in the future. For now, I'll see you again in the next videos.